The floating cities of Vithrak Prime moved slowly through the thick orange clouds of their gas giant world. Each city was a beautiful bubble of clear material that held breathable air for the jellyfish-like beings who lived inside. The Vithrak had lived this way for thousands of years, their cities drifting peacefully through the endless sky of their planet. But now everything was changing. Their star was dying, growing bigger and hotter each day. The once comfortable clouds around their world were getting warmer. The cities that had floated safely for so long were now being cooked by the increasing heat. Zephyra pressed her translucent body against the viewing wall of her city. Her light patterns flickered with worry as she watched the temperature readings climb higher. She was one of the few Vithrak who still remembered the old stories about stars that grew too big and destroyed everything around them. Most of her people had forgotten these tales, believing their star would shine forever. The city's central chamber filled with soft blue and purple lights as the council gathered. Each Vithrak spoke through patterns of light that danced across their bell-shaped bodies. The conversation was urgent and fearful. The outer cities report hull damage from the heat. One elder flashed in rapid yellow pulses. "We must evacuate the lower atmosphere. Where can we go?" Another replied with deep red swirls. "The upper clouds are too thin. We cannot survive there for long." Zephyra swam forward, her own lights joining the discussion. "We have sent signals to the stars for 3 cycles now. Surely someone will hear us and come to help." The council's lights dimmed with sadness. They had indeed been calling for help across the galaxy, using their most powerful transmitters to send mathematical signals, prime numbers, and even artistic displays of their situation. But so far, no one had answered that far across space. The Craxi Empire received the Vithrak signals in their war room on the fortress world of Grimlock. The massive reptilian beings studied the transmissions with cold eyes. Another weak species begging for help. General Thrax growled, his claws clicking on the metal table. "If they cannot save themselves, they deserve to die. We have no use for weaklings." The Craxi deleted the messages and returned to planning their next conquest. In the crystal spires of Zephyr Prime, the logical minds of the Zephyrian collective processed the same signals. Their computer-like brains calculated the cost of a rescue mission. Distance to Vithrak system, 847 light-years. Required resources, 12.7 million energy units. Potential return on investment, 0. The Vithrak produce nothing we need. Recommendation? Ask the Prime Calculator. Ignore transmission. File under unprofitable ventures. The Etherians, beings of pure energy who lived in the space between stars, considered the plea with ancient wisdom. They had evolved beyond physical form millions of years ago and looked down on creatures who still needed bodies. These flesh-bound creatures cling to their crude matter, they whispered through cosmic winds. Let them learn to transcend their physical limitations as we did. Growth comes through struggle. They too turned away, leaving the Vithrak to face their fate alone. On Earth, Dr. Sarah Chun sat in the quiet radio observatory in Chile, listening to signals from space as she did every night. The large dish above her slowly tracked across the sky, gathering whispers from distant worlds. At 3:47 a.m., something new came through the speakers. It started as numbers, prime sequences that any intelligent species would recognize. But as Sarah listened longer, she heard something else hidden in the pattern. "Computer, analyze the signal structure," she said, leaning forward in her chair, the screen filled with data. But Sarah was already hearing what the computer would soon confirm. The mathematical sequences had rhythm. They rose and fell like music, like someone singing a sad song. Sarah had spent years studying how different cultures expressed emotion through art and music. This signal reminded her of something very specific, a lullaby her grandmother used to sing when Sarah was scared or sad. "Oh my God," she whispered, grabbing the phone to call the director. "Sir, you need to hear this. I think we're listening to someone cry for help." Dr. Martinez arrived at the observatory within an hour, his hair messy from sleep. "What do you have, Sarah?" She played the signal through the speakers, pointing to the wave patterns on her screen. "Look at the frequency changes. This isn't just math. Someone is singing. Someone is scared and alone and asking for help." As they listened, the signal changed slightly. The mathematical part stayed the same, but the emotional undertone grew stronger, more desperate. "How far away is this coming from?" Dr. Martinez asked. Sarah checked her calculations. "The Kepler 442 system. About 1,200 light-years from here. That's impossible to reach with our current technology." "I know," Sarah said sadly. "But they don't know that. They're still calling." Over the next few weeks, the signal continued. Earth's radio telescopes tracked it constantly, and Sarah worked day and night to understand more about the beings sending it. She discovered they use light patterns to communicate, probably living in a gas environment where sound wouldn't work well. Other countries began picking up the signal too. The message was simple but heartbreaking. "We are dying. Please help us. We don't want to disappear from the universe." World leaders called emergency meetings. Scientists gathered in groups to discuss what could be done. Everyone agreed on one thing: these people were going to die, and Earth was too far away to help them. But something else was happening that no one noticed at first. In parks around the world, dogs began howling at the same time the Vithrak signals were strongest. Birds changed their flight patterns, forming spirals in the sky. Whales in the ocean started singing new songs they had never sung before. Sarah noticed it first when her own dog, Max, began acting strange. Every evening at 3:47 a.m., exactly when the signal was strongest, Max would go to the window and howl. It was a sad, lonely sound that made Sarah's heart hurt. "What's wrong, boy?" she asked, scratching behind his ears. Max looked at her with his big brown eyes and whined softly, as if he was trying to tell her something important. The Vithrak signal continued to reach across space, carrying its message of fear and hope. Someone was calling for help, and while the great civilizations of the galaxy had turned away, something on Earth was beginning to listen. Dr. Marcus Webb had been studying whales for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like what was happening in the Pacific Ocean. The humpback whales were singing together in ways that made no sense. Usually, each whale had its own unique song, but now hundreds of them were creating the same melody. Marcus floated in his research boat, listening to the underwater microphones. The whale song was beautiful but strange. It had patterns he recognized from somewhere else, but he couldn't remember where. Dr. Webb called Jenny, his research assistant, from the boat's radio room. "You need to hear this news report." Marcus climbed aboard, water dripping from his wetsuit. The radio crackled with a news story about strange animal behavior around the world. In London, every pigeon in the city suddenly flew in the same direction at exactly 3:47 a.m. local time, the reporter said. In Kenya, elephant herds that had been separated for years walked hundreds of miles to gather in the same spot. Wildlife experts are calling it the most unusual animal behavior ever recorded. Marcus looked at the time log for the whale recordings. 3:47 a.m. Pacific time, exactly when the whales had started their new song. His phone rang. It was his old friend Sarah Chun from the radio observatory. "Marcus, I need your help," Sarah said without saying hello. "You study animal communication, right?" "Yes, why?" "I think the animals are hearing the same signal we picked up from space. The one from the dying aliens." Marcus felt his heart start beating faster. "That's impossible. Animals can't receive radio signals. Maybe not radio signals as we understand them. Can you meet me at the lab tonight?" Bring any recordings you have of recent animal sounds. That evening, Marcus arrived at the observatory with a bag full of recording equipment. Sarah led him to a small room filled with computers and audio equipment. "Play your whale recordings," Sarah said. Connecting her equipment to his dot, the whale song filled the room, haunting, beautiful, and somehow familiar. Sarah nodded and played the alien signal through her speakers. As the two sounds mixed together, Marcus felt chills run down his spine. The patterns were the same. The whales were singing the same melody as the dying aliens, 1,200 light-years away. How is this possible? Marcus whispered. Sarah showed him data on her computer screen. "I've been working with a quantum physicist at MIT. We think the alien signals aren't just electromagnetic waves. They're quantum entangled with something deeper, emotion itself. I don't understand." Sarah sat down and rubbed her tired eyes. "Think about it, Marcus. What makes humans special compared to most aliens we imagine? We feel things. We care about others, even strangers. We have empathy. And animals have even more empathy than we do sometimes," Marcus added, beginning to understand. "Exactly. Dogs will risk their lives to save their owners. Dolphins will help injured humans they've never met. Elephants mourn their dead. What if Earth's animals evolved something no other planet has? The ability to feel emotional signals across space." Over the next few days, reports poured in from around the world. In Australia, dingoes and domestic dogs were gathering in packs, howling at the sky. In Africa, lions and zebras were ignoring each other, standing together in groups and staring at the same point in space. Bears in Alaska had stopped hibernating and were walking toward the same mountain. Migrating birds were changing their paths to fly in mathematical spirals that looked exactly like the alien number sequences. Dr. Martinez called an emergency meeting at the observatory. Scientists from around the world joined by video call. "We need to understand what's happening," he said. "Are the animals trying to tell us something?" A biologist from Brazil raised her hand on the video screen. "The jungle animals here are doing something incredible. Jaguars, monkeys, birds, they're all working together to clear paths through the forest. It's like they're trying to build something." "Build what?" Dr. Martinez asked. "We don't know. But whatever it is, they're all following the same plan." Marcus shared his research about the whale songs. "I think the animals aren't just hearing the alien signal. They're responding to it. They want to help." A physicist from Japan spoke up. "That's scientifically impossible. Animals can't understand concepts like space travel or alien rescue missions. Can't they?" Sarah argued. "Bees can navigate using the sun and stars. Birds migrate thousands of miles using magnetic fields. What if animals understand the universe in ways we don't?" That night, Marcus returned to the ocean to study the whales more closely. As his boat floated in the dark water, he listened to the underwater sounds. The whales weren't just singing anymore. They were calling. Through his underwater cameras, Marcus watched something amazing. Whales, dolphins, and even sharks were swimming together in perfect formation. They moved in complex patterns, like they were practicing for something important. One old humpback whale surfaced near Marcus's boat. The whale looked at him with one enormous eye, and Marcus felt like the animal was trying to communicate something urgent. "I wish I could understand what you're trying to tell me," Marcus said softly. The whale made a low sound, then dove deep. On his instruments, Marcus saw the whale swimming down to where a pod of dolphins waited. Together, they began swimming in a pattern. Marcus recognized from Sarah's data. It was the same mathematical sequence the aliens had been sending. Marcus grabbed his radio and called Sarah. "They're not just hearing the signal. They're learning from it." "What do you mean?" "The whales and dolphins are swimming in the same patterns as the alien math. It's like they're trying to solve the same problem the aliens are asking for help with." Miles away, Sarah stood in her observatory, looking up at the stars. Around the building, local cats and dogs had gathered quietly, all facing the same direction in space. "Marcus," she said quietly into the radio, "I think the animals know something we don't. They understand that someone out there is dying, and they want to help. But how can they help? We can't even help." Sarah watched a group of ravens land on the radio dish above her. The birds arranged themselves in a pattern she had seen before, another mathematical sequence from the alien signal. "Maybe," she said slowly, "we're thinking about this wrong. Maybe the question isn't how can we help them. Maybe the question is how can we help our animals help them." The raven pattern shifted slightly, and Sarah realized the birds were improving on the alien mathematics. They had found a more efficient version of the same sequence dot all around the world. Earth's animals were responding to a cry for help from across the galaxy. They didn't understand technology or space travel, but they understood something more important. They understood that someone was in pain and needed help. And for the first time in Earth's history, every species was working toward the same goal. The world's top scientists gathered in Geneva for an emergency meeting. For 3 weeks, every government had been receiving reports about animal behavior that made no sense. Dr. Sarah Chum and Dr. Marcus Webb presented their findings to the packed conference room. "The evidence is clear," Sarah said, pointing to charts and graphs on the big screen. "Animals worldwide are responding to the alien distress signal. But they're not just responding, they're trying to solve the problem." General Harrison from the U.S. Space Force stood up. "Dr. Chun, with all respect, animals cannot understand space travel. This is a human problem that requires human solutions." Before Sarah could answer, her phone buzzed with an urgent message. Dr. Yamamoto from Tokyo was calling. "Sarah, you need to see what's happening in Japan," Dr. Yamamoto said through the video call. "The bees have rebuilt their hives. Rebuilt them how? They've created geometric structures we've never seen before. Our engineering team studied them and, Sarah, these designs could work for a new type of spacecraft engine." The conference room fell silent. Dr. Martinez, who had been skeptical, asked, "What kind of engine?" Dr. Yamamoto's voice shook with excitement. "The beehive structure creates a quantum resonance chamber. If we build it large enough and use the right materials, it could theoretically fold spacetime. We could travel to distant stars." General Harrison frowned. "Bees don't know anything about quantum physics." "Maybe they don't need to know the science," Marcus said. "They just need to feel what's needed." Evolution gave them the ability to solve complex problems instinctively. Reports started coming in from around the world. In Madagascar, lemurs had led researchers to caves containing rare crystals that were perfect for quantum computing. In Norway, Arctic foxes were digging up metals that had been buried by ancient meteor impacts. Dr. Patel from Mumbai called in with more incredible news. "Dolphins have been beaching themselves here, but not to die. They're bringing us things from the ocean floor, materials we didn't even know existed. When we analyzed them, we found they're perfect for building spacecraft hulls that can survive in deep space." In Brazil, Dr. Santos reported that spider colonies had started spinning new types of webs. "The silk has properties we've never seen before. It's stronger than steel, but lighter than air. The spiders are creating it in huge quantities." As reports continued to pour in, Sarah began to understand what was happening. "They're not just acting randomly," she said. "Every species is contributing what they do best." An engineer from Germany shared his screen showing beehive blueprints. "If we follow these designs exactly, we could build engines that travel faster than light. But we need materials that don't exist on Earth's surface." "Actually, they do exist," said Dr. Kim from South Korea. "Elephants in Kenya have been leading people to specific locations. Each site contains exactly the materials needed for these bee designs. It's like they have a map of every rare element buried on Earth. The conference room buzzed with excitement and disbelief. Dr. Rodriguez from Spain showed pictures of bird formations. Migrating birds across Europe and Africa have changed their flight paths. They're creating patterns in the sky that show optimal navigation routes through space. This is impossible, General Harrison insisted. Animals cannot plan space missions. Dr. Chun stood up and faced the general. Sir, with respect, maybe we need to change how we think about intelligence. Ants can build cities. Bees can navigate using the sun. Whales can communicate across entire oceans. What if animals understand solutions that we're too focused on technology to see? A new call came in from Australia. Dr. Wilson appeared on screen, standing next to what looked like a giant nest. Bowerbirds have been building something extraordinary, Dr. Wilson said. But they're not just using their usual materials. They're incorporating human technology minus circuit boards, metal pieces, even small computers, into complex structures. When we analyzed the designs, we realized they've created natural computer systems. Sarah felt her heart racing. What kind of computer systems? Navigation computers. Communication arrays. Life support systems. It's like they're building organic spacecraft components. Marcus shook his head in amazement. They're trying to build a rescue ship. Dr. Thompson from Canada joined the call. Polar bears here have been moving in coordinated groups, leading us to specific locations in the Arctic. Each location has different materials. Some have rare metals, others have crystals, others have organic compounds. But when we put all the materials together, they form a perfect ecosystem that could support life in space. The evidence was overwhelming. Every species on Earth was contributing to the same project, building a way to reach the dying aliens. Bees provided engine designs. Spiders created hull materials. Elephants found fuel sources. Birds mapped navigation routes. Bears located life support materials. But how do they know what to do? Asked Dr. Martinez. How do they know what parts are needed? Sarah looked at the data patterns on her screen. The alien signal wasn't just a cry for help. It contained technical information. Mathematical sequences that described their technology, their ships, their needs. The aliens have been sending blueprints, she realized. Not just asking for help, but showing us what kind of help they need. The animals have been listening to technical specifications for weeks. A biologist from India called in. Tigers and leopards have been working together, something that never happens. They're clearing forest areas in specific geometric patterns. When we measured the areas, they match exactly with the engine designs the bees created. Dr. Webb looked around the conference room. They're preparing construction sites. In the Amazon, monkeys had started collecting specific plants and arranging them in complex patterns. Scientists discovered the plants created natural chemical reactions that could power spacecraft systems. In Africa, lions and hyenas, natural enemies, were hunting together and bringing their kills to specific locations. But they weren't eating. They were leaving the organic materials for insects, which broke them down into compounds perfect for creating living spacecraft. Hall's. The most incredible report came from Antarctica. Penguins had somehow convinced seals to help them move ice blocks into precise formations. The ice structures were creating natural cryogenic storage systems. It's like every animal on Earth has become part of a construction project. Marcus said in wonder. General Harrison sat down heavily. This is beyond anything we've ever imagined. But even if the animals can show us how to build a rescue ship, we don't have the infrastructure to construct something this complex. That's when Dr. Petrov from Russia called with the most shocking news yet. Bears here have been working with human construction workers. The bears seem to understand our machinery better than we do, They're operating bulldozers and cranes. That's impossible. Sir, I'm watching it happen right now. A brown bear just helped us install a foundation that would have taken our team weeks to complete. The bear did it in 6 hours. Around the world, the same pattern was emerging. Animals weren't just providing designs and materials. They were helping with construction. Horses were pulling heavy equipment to remote locations. Crows were delivering small parts to hard-to-reach places. Dolphins were helping underwater construction. Sarah looked at the global map showing animal activity. Every continent was covered with construction sites, material gathering operations, and coordination centers. Earth's entire ecosystem had become a massive engineering project. "We're not building a rescue mission," she said quietly. "They are. We're just helping." The room fell silent as everyone realized the truth. Humanity wasn't leading this project. They were being invited to join it. Every animal on Earth had heard the cry for help and decided to answer it together. For the first time in history, every species on the planet was working toward the same goal. 6 months after the first animal gathering, something incredible was taking shape in the Nevada desert. What had started as separate construction sites around the world was now one massive project. The ship rising from the sand looked like nothing humans had ever built. Commander Sarah Chen walked around the growing vessel, still unable to believe what she was seeing. The hull wasn't made of metal, it was grown. Coral-like structures formed the main framework, but they were stronger than steel and could repair themselves if damaged. Dr. Chen called Tom Rodriguez, the chief engineer. "The dolphins want to show you something." Sarah followed Tom to a large pool of water that connected directly to the ship's interior. 3 dolphins floated at the surface, clicking and whistling excitedly. Dr. Marcus Webb arrived carrying his underwater translation equipment. After listening for a moment, he looked up with amazement. "They've figured out how to create artificial gravity," Marcus said. "By swimming in specific patterns inside the ship's water chambers, they can generate gravitational fields. No spinning sections or complex machinery needed." Sarah shook her head in wonder. "How do they know how to do that?" "I think they've been practicing in the ocean for months. Whales and dolphins have been creating water currents that match the mathematical patterns from the alien signal." The ship's bridge was unlike anything from science fiction movies. Instead of metal and glass, it was a living space that looked like the inside of a giant flower. Vines and organic filaments connected different control stations, while bioluminescent panels provided gentle light. A group of octopuses had made the bridge their home. Sarah watched as one octopus operated multiple control systems at once, its 8 arms moving independently to manage navigation, communication, and life support. "They're better at multitasking than any human crew could be," Tom observed. "And they solve problems faster than our computers." In the ship's lower levels, the life support system hummed quietly. It was actually a miniature rainforest, complete with trees, flowers, and small animals. The ecosystem cleaned the air, provided fresh water, and even grew food, all while maintaining perfect balance. A family of bees had built their hives into the ship's walls. Their honey provided nutrition, but more importantly, their hive structures created quantum resonance chambers that powered the faster-than-light engines. "The entire ship is alive," Sarah said to her assembled team. "Every part of it is living, growing, adapting." The most amazing part was the crew. Animals from every continent had somehow made their way to Nevada to volunteer for the mission. Not all of them could survive in space, but they each contributed something important. Arctic terns, birds known for the longest migration in the animal kingdom, had become the ship's navigation specialists. They understood stellar patterns in ways that amazed human astronomers. A pack of wolves had appointed themselves as security and coordination officers. They moved through the ship ensuring all systems were working together properly. Ravens served as communication officers, somehow able to understand and translate between different species, languages. The most surprising volunteers were the tardigrades, microscopic animals known for surviving in the vacuum of space. Billions of them had organized themselves into repair crews for the ship's exterior hull. "I still don't understand how this is possible," General Harrison said during his weekly inspection. He had gone from skeptic to reluctant supporter as the impossible ship became reality. Sarah showed him to the ship's heart, a chamber where a giant sequoia tree grew up through the center of the vessel. The tree's roots connected to every system on the ship, while its branches provided oxygen and regulated temperature. "The tree is the ship's brain," Sarah explained. "It coordinates all the biological systems. And look at this." She pointed to the tree's trunk, where patterns of light moved up and down like slow lightning. The patterns matched the alien distress signal exactly. The tree is receiving the signal directly and translating it for the rest of the ship's systems. It's like the entire vessel is tuned to the alien frequency. Construction continued around the clock, with human workers and animals collaborating in ways that should have been impossible. Elephants lifted heavy components into place while mice and rats crawled through small spaces to connect delicate systems. Bears operated heavy machinery with surprising skill, while cats tested the ship's balance and stability by walking along narrow beams. The ship's weapon system was the most unusual of all. It didn't have any. Instead, it had healing systems. Medical bays staffed by animals known for their healing abilities. Dogs whose saliva could help wounds heal faster. Cats whose purring could reduce pain and stress. "We're not building a warship," Sarah realized. "We're building a hospital ship. A rescue vessel." A rescue vessel. As completion approached, Sarah faced the hardest decision of her life. The ship could theoretically make the journey to the alien world, but no human had ever traveled faster than light. They didn't know if people could survive the trip. The animals seemed to understand the risk. Many species that couldn't survive in space had still contributed to the construction, knowing they couldn't join the mission, but others were determined to go. A group of astronaut candidates had been joined by volunteers from across the animal kingdom. Service dogs trained for space missions. Mice that had adapted to zero gravity during months of preparation. Even some of the octopuses that had learned to operate the ship's systems. "They know it's dangerous," Marcus said as he watched the mixed crew preparing for departure. "But they also know someone needs help." The night before launch, Sarah stood on the ship's observation deck. Through the transparent living walls, she could see the desert outside. Thousands of animals had gathered. Creatures that couldn't join the mission but wanted to see them off. Lions sat next to deer. Eagles perched next to rabbits. Natural predators and prey had put aside their instincts to support the mission. A young elephant approached the ship and touched the hull gently with her trunk. The ship's surface glowed softly in response, as if saying goodbye. Sarah felt tears in her eyes as she realized what they were witnessing. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It was proof that when life is threatened anywhere in the universe, all life responds. The next morning, final preparations were complete. The ship's bioengines hummed with quiet power. The quantum chambers created by the beehives began to resonate. The living systems throughout the vessel synchronized into perfect harmony. "All stations report ready," Tom announced from the bridge, where he worked alongside an octopus that had learned to understand human speech. Sarah took her place in the captain's chair, which had grown from the ship itself to fit her perfectly. Around the bridge, her mixed crew of humans and animals waited for orders. A wolf named Alpha sat at her right side, appointed by his pack as the mission's first officer. On her left, a raven called Navigator perched on a specially grown branch that gave him access to the ship's communication systems. "Open a channel to Earth," Sarah commanded, through the ship's organic communication array. She spoke to the billions of people watching around the world. "This is Commander Chun, aboard Earth's first interstellar vessel. We don't have a name for our ship because it was built by too many species to count. We carry the hopes and determination of every creature on Earth." She paused, looking around at her extraordinary crew. "We go not as conquerors or explorers, but as neighbors responding to a call for help. Today, Earth answers that cry. Today, we show the galaxy what it means to care." The bioengines engaged with a sound like whale song mixed with thunder. The ship lifted smoothly from the desert floor, its living hull shimmering in the sunlight dot as they broke through Earth's atmosphere and entered the darkness of space. The ship began to sing, a harmony created by every voice aboard. Human and animal together, the rescue mission had begun. The journey to Kepler 442 took 3 months in the bioorganic ship. During the trip, something beautiful happened aboard the vessel. The mixed crew of humans and animals learned to work together in ways no one had thought possible. Commander Sarah Chun watched from the bridge as Dr. Marcus Webb played with a group of dolphins in the ship's main pool. The dolphins had become the ship's navigation team, using their natural echolocation abilities to detect obstacles in space that the ship's sensors missed. Alpha, the Wolf, who served as first officer, padded onto the bridge carrying a datapad in his mouth. He had learned to read human symbols and now helped coordinate between different parts of the crew. "Thank you, Alpha," Sarah said, scratching behind his ears as she took the report. The Wolf wagged his tail and returned to his duties. Navigator, the Raven, squawked from his perch. Through months of practice, Sarah had learned to understand his warnings. "You're right," she said, looking at the readings. "We're almost there." Ahead of them, the Kepler 442 system appeared on their screens. The dying star was huge and red, much bigger than it should have been. Around it, the gas giant that had been home to the Vithrak was barely visible through the increasing heat and radiation. "Life signs?" Sarah asked. The octopus operating the sensors moved its arms across the biocontrols. Tom Rodriguez, working alongside it, translated the readings. "Still detecting Vithrak cities, but they're failing. Whole breaches on the outer settlements. The inner cities are running out of power trying to maintain their cooling systems." Sarah's heart sank. They had traveled across the galaxy, but they might be too late. That's when Navigator let out a sharp cry and pointed with his wing. On the communication screen, patterns of light were appearing, weak but unmistakable. "They're still calling," Marcus said from the pool area. "The dolphins can hear them through the water systems." Sarah opened the ship's communication array. "This is Commander Chun of the Earth vessel. We received your signal. We're here to help." The response came immediately, not in words, but in brilliant flashes of light that filled their screens. Even without translation, everyone on the ship understood the emotion behind the patterns: joy, hope, disbelief that someone had actually come. But they weren't the only ones watching. Across the galaxy, the great civilizations had detected the Earthship's arrival. In their war rooms and council chambers, confusion reigned. "Impossible!" General Thrax of the Craxi Empire roared. "How did such a primitive species cross interstellar space? Our scouts said Earth barely had chemical rockets." On Zephyr Prime, the collective's computers worked frantically to analyze the Earth vessel. Ship composition: unknown organic compounds. Propulsion system: unprecedented bioquantum hybrid. Crew manifest: multiple non-sapient species working in coordination. Recommendation? Asked the Prime Calculator. Error. No logical framework exists for this scenario. The Etherians, watching from their dimension between stars, felt something they hadn't experienced in millions of years: surprise. How did flesh-bound creatures achieve what we considered impossible? they whispered to each other. Their bodies should limit them, not enable them. Meanwhile, the Earth ship moved into orbit around the dying Vithrak world. Sarah could see the floating cities through the ship's living viewports, beautiful spheres of light growing dim as their power failed. Rescue plan? Tom asked. Sarah looked around the bridge and her mixed crew. We do what Earth does best. We adapt, improvise, and never leave anyone behind. The rescue operation began immediately. The Earth ship's hull opened like a flower, revealing docking bays that had grown specifically to connect with Vithrak cities. The Dolphins led rescue teams into the gas planet's atmosphere, using their echolocation to navigate safely through the thick clouds. The octopuses operated rescue vehicles that could extend multiple arms to gently capture failing city pods. Ravens flew communication devices between rescue teams, ensuring coordination. Wolves organized evacuation procedures with pack hunting efficiency. The first Vithrak city to be rescued contained about 1,000 of the jellyfish-like beings. As their city pod was pulled into the Earth ship's protective embrace, Sarah watched the aliens' light patterns change. Fear turned to wonder. Despair became hope. Dr. Webb, working with the ship's translation systems, managed to interpret some of their communication. They're asking how we found them, he reported. They want to know why we came. Sarah thought about all the animals that had worked to build this ship. All the species that had given their best abilities to save strangers they would never meet. Tell them, she said, that when someone calls for help, Earth answers. The rescue continued for hours. City after city was brought aboard the living ship, which grew new chambers to house each group of survivors. The ship's ecosystem adapted automatically, creating the right atmospheric conditions and temperature for the Vithrak to survive. But the greatest miracle was watching the interactions between species. Vithrak children, if they could be called children, communicated with Earth dolphins through light patterns and sound. Adult Vithrak worked alongside human engineers to coordinate the rescue of their people. When a Vithrak elder's life support failed during the rescue, it was a service dog that stayed by the alien's side, somehow sensing the creature's distress. The dog's presence seemed to comfort the dying alien, whose light patterns grew peaceful instead of fearful. As the last city was rescued, the Vithrak's dying star began its final expansion. The gas giant that had been their home for thousands of years was consumed by the growing star. Sarah watched from the bridge as an entire world disappeared. If they had arrived even a day later, the rescue would have been impossible. All Vithrak survivors are safe and secure, Tom reported. Total rescued, 847,000 individuals. Sarah felt tears on her cheeks. Nearly 1 million lives saved. The journey back to Earth took longer because the ship was now carrying so many passengers. But during the trip, something wonderful happened. The Vithrak and Earth species began to learn from each other. Vithrak children learned to play with Earth animals. Their light patterns became more complex as they tried to communicate with dolphins and ravens. Adult Vithrak worked with bees and spiders, fascinated by how these small creatures could create such complex structures. One young Vithrak named Zara spent most of her time with Alpha and his wolf pack. Though she had no fur or legs, she somehow became part of their group. The wolves accepted her as pack family, and she learned to howl using light patterns that matched their sounds. When Earth came into view, the ship's communication arrays activated. The Vithrak wanted to send a message to the planet that had saved them. Their combined light patterns created a display visible from orbit, a thank you message written in mathematics, emotion, and pure gratitude. But the real message came when the ship entered Earth's atmosphere. Every Vithrak aboard began to glow with patterns they had never made before. Dr. Webb worked frantically to translate. "Wonder," he said, his voice full of emotion. "They're expressing wonder. They can't believe a planet where so many different species work together as one. The ship landed in the same desert where it had been built. Thousands of animals and humans waited to welcome the survivors. Sarah watched as Vithrak emerged from the ship, their light patterns flickering with amazement. Earth elephants approached gently, extending their trunks in greeting. Birds landed nearby, not to threaten but to welcome. Even large predators sat peacefully, as if understanding these were guests. Zara floated out of the ship, staying close to Alpha's pack. Her light patterns were brighter than Sarah had ever seen, pure joy expressed in living color. "How?" asked an old Vithrak elder, his patterns translated by the ship's systems. "How did your world learn to care for strangers?" Sarah looked around at the incredible gathering. Lions sitting next to deer, eagles perched near rabbits, humans working alongside animals who had once been afraid of them, and now jellyfish-like aliens joining the community of Earth. "I think," Sarah said, "we never learned not to care." In the months that followed, the story of Earth's rescue mission spread across the galaxy. Other civilizations began to reconsider their policies about helping species in distress. The Kraxi Empire, shamed by Earth's example, began using their military might to protect weaker worlds. Instead of conquering them, the Zephyrians started factoring compassion into their calculations, discovering that cooperation often produced better results than cold logic. Even the ancient Etherians began paying attention to the physical species they had dismissed, realizing that bodies and emotions might be sources of strength, not weakness. Earth didn't become the galaxy's strongest military power or its richest trade center. Instead, it became something more valuable, the place you called when someone needed help and no one else wanted to answer. The Vithrak built a new settlement in Earth's ocean, their floating cities becoming part of the planet's ecosystem. Their children grew up playing with dolphins and whales, while their adults worked with human scientists to develop new technologies. Every evening, as the sun set over their new home, the Vithrak would create light displays that mixed with whale songs. The music could be heard from space, the sound of two species who had learned that the universe was vast and cold, but never too vast or too cold for someone to care.